Hello everyone, it's George from Ireland. So in this video I'm going to be commenting on the resignation of Cressida Dick. She is, or was, the Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police. So that's the London Police, the police of the metropolis, to give its official title, the Met, as it's popularly known. So she's Dame Cressida Dick, Dame being an honour given to her by the Queen for her public service. Anyway, so Miss Dick made that announcement just a few hours ago when the mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, indicated that he'd lost confidence in her. So this was sort of the death of a thousand cuts. Of course, a few things had gone wrong. She's in charge of over 30,000 police officers, and you can't solve every crime. It's inevitable that in a group of people, 30,000 strong, some people are going to do things which are unethical, which are disreputable, and there's been a bit too much reputational damage. There have been allegations of sexual harassment, and I'm afraid in a group of 30,000 people there are bound to be a few allegations, and probably a few of them which are true. But that's not her fault. Nobody accused her of doing this. To root it out, and the trouble is we have to have a witch hunt, we have to overreact to the most trifling thing, and it becomes too much about public relations instead of just good policing, chasing headlines, appeasing the yellow press and these inflammatory reports by various journalists desperate for a story to make a mountain out of a molehill. Now, a police watchdog said it's shocking that there's misogyny and so forth, and there's racial prejudice within the police, and she's not done enough to root it out. So the Metropolitan Police has mostly been about advancing the politically correct agenda for decades. They're just shock troops of wokeism, really. Anyway, so Miss Dick, she joined the Metropolitan Police about 40 years ago when far fewer women were in it. She went to Balliol College, Oxford, where she read forestry, admittedly a subject that doesn't even exist at Oxford anymore. It was notoriously easy to get in for. And I think her father was even Oxford Don, so she came from an unusually academic background for someone joining the police back then. It was very much a white working class boys club in those days. And another thing is she's an out lesbian, which isn't controversial now, but as far back as the 1980s, that was quite contentious. That was very much disapproved by a lot of people. The thing is, the police used to be more working class Tories now that they're bourgeois socialist intellectuals. It's overly intellectualised policing, in my view. But what would I know? I've never been a police officer for a single day. So anyway, so the Prime Minister, he has warmly praised Miss Dick's contribution to law enforcement throughout her career. And likewise, the Home Secretary, who's in charge of the police ultimately, she had some kind words to say for Miss Dick. Despite the fact Priti Patel only days ago, she was lambasting the Metropolitan Police, it came to light that some police officers around Charing Cross were part of some chat group in which they told some macabre jokes, some of them quipped about killing black children and various highly contentious things like that. Jokes which most people would say would be in questionable taste, to say the least. So one of the things that really did for Miss Dick was last year, a police officer, he mock arrested this woman called Sarah Everard. I think he was genuinely in his police uniform and with handcuffs, said this is an arrest. So she submitted to the arrest, assuming it was a genuine arrest, even though she'd done nothing wrong or even suspicious. He took her off into the woods, raped her, murdered her, buried her body. Nevertheless, he was caught and convicted of this kidnap, rape and murder. But somehow this is laid at Dame Dick's door. Now, she had no role in the murder. Okay, murder is what she's against. She's not promoting or expediting this sort of crime. But people said, oh, everyone knew that he was a wrong-un. They used to say that his sobriquet was the rapist and so on. So as though she could have predicted that crime and prevented it happening before it happened. This is sort of turning things into thought crimes. Of course, it's horrendous that poor young woman, Sarah Everard, was subjected to the worst possible crime. No decent person can want that. I don't minimise that, but I'm just saying that that Cressida Dick is not responsible for that, even indirectly. So I can't really judge how effective she was as a senior police officer. No, crime in London is fairly low. A lot of it because there's been coronavirus. There were no football matches, no public gatherings, no protests to police for quite a long time, which allowed the police to chase up other things, catch up on county lines. Low-level drug dealing, of course, people are out onto the streets again, so more difficult. There are very few burglaries, partly because householders were at home all the time, so there wasn't such a chance to burgle people. and if you were out on the street, you were more noticeable to the police. So they had to be enforcing that. Anyway, so there was a previous head of the London Police, Sir Ian Blair, and he left when Boris Johnson was Mayor of London, partly because the then Mayor Johnson signalled his displeasure with Sir Ian. Now, Cressida Dick wasn't legally obliged to stand down, but she wanted to sustain pressure for several months, people saying that she must tender her resignation, and she's finally done so. I don't think it was quite inevitable, but some of the rank and file police officers have strongly spoken up for Dame Cressida Dick, and likewise I think she's been ill-used, a bit of a whipping boy for some populist politicians. So I don't, there's not like a crime wave. She's had to deal with some very testing times. Now crime is not so bad, but a few years ago when she took over, it was rather worse. There are not that many murders in London and so on. So the trouble is, and then the police become fixated with presentational issues rather than actually tackling crime. So policing has become too politicised. The police are able to get on with it. I don't care what the papers say. Popular, unpopular, convenient for a certain politician. Not my problem. I get on and I follow in police imperatives, and I uphold the law to the best of my ability. And obviously the police have to be able to prioritise. If it's graffiti, if it's shoplifting, they should just let it drift most of the time, and tackle obviously the murders and the kidnappings and the more serious stuff. They just don't have the manpower, or woman power. I've been very politically correct, to deal with everything. I think they should stop wasting time policing Facebook. Did somebody say boo to a goose? Or real trivialities. All right, there's some hurt feelings. The trouble is legislative hyperactivity. Since Blair came in, outlawing tens of thousands of actions, anything that causes fear, distress, or alarm is a crime. Wow. Distress, upsetting anybody, saying something, looking at them the wrong way. It's ridiculous to try and get the police involved, to think that such things should be adjudicated by the courts. But so much is justiciable these days. So it's preposterous that we've tried to hyper-regulate every facet of human behaviour, the minutiae of daily interactions. We're bound not to get along with each other. Someone will wind you up the wrong way, someone will look at you the wrong way or for slightly too long. And then that is a matter for the police. This is preposterous, and what a squandering of resources. But Dame Cressida Dick, well, she had to enforce the law, like it or not. I suspect she did like it. I mean, I would really like to see an opinion poll of the police officers, voting intentions, political proclivities. I would suspect it strongly to the left. They are public sector workers. They've been more or less brainwashed into this leftist mentality that the state has to be everywhere, and the state has to be enforcing the PC agenda. There we are. Who's next up for this role? And it's a bit of a shame that police officers can be felled by politicians. Right, toodle pip.